2 on Wednesday, April 6th. Would you please call the roll?
Cavell?
Here.
Colwell?
Here.
McGillivray?
Here.
Howell? Charles?
Present.
Long?
Here.
Moss?
Here.
Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before we move on, I just want to make a couple of points. First of all, I sat through all the committee meetings yesterday, which went way long, and a lot of those items have come to finance today, so we're going to try and move this meeting along. Obviously, EDI even ran long, too. And 3 of the members of this commission sit on the Parks Commission, which is scheduled to meet at 2 o'clock, and I really want to accommodate their attempts to get their committee together, too. I really hope we're not still talking at 2 o'clock. So with that, it's my meeting. I'm going to,
Chop, chop.
chop, chop. I just want to make one other point. It has nothing to do with finance, but I want to remind everybody who's listening today, if you want to get that 4th booster to your COVID, come on over to our health department. It's walk-in, and you can get one any time of the day, 9 to 5. So with that, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the March 16th session as well as the closed session from March 16th. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Anybody have any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, can we just, all in favor? Okay, all in favor of approval of the 2 minutes that are stated here, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Minutes are approved. Next up is approval of today's agenda. Do we have any changes, additions, or deletions? Seeing none, I need a motion. Commissioner, sorry.
You know me.
Long, I'm sorry. Commissioner Long, supported by Commissioner Charles. I know, and everybody's got names in front of them. So, okay.
So there's no excuse.
No, there's not. All in favor of approving today's agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comment. Is anyone from the public here that wishes to address the committee? If so, please come to the end of the table, use a microphone, and state your name and the community you come from, and you are given 3 minutes to speak on anything that's on our agenda today.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion, and although I attended from 9 o'clock yesterday until 1:15 when I had to leave, I was not able to hear anything about the housing trust or the initiatives that have been put forward and you're trying to push through that, to me, may violate the law. I don't know where all this money's coming from. I do know, I researched the Federal Register, and under HUD, it says the grantee agrees to assume all the responsibilities for environmental review, decision-making, and the actions as specified and required in regulations issued by the Secretary. And the grantee further acknowledges its responsibility for adherence to the agreement by sub-recipient entities. That's a very important thing, to which it makes funding assistance hereunder available. I think that just means all of you guys could be held liable if you give out federal funds that aren't eligible to be given out. And I've actually seen situations where I have reasons to question whether these are all, in fact, the one meeting, they specifically said all the workforce development money was available for the refugees and immigrants. Mm-hmm. And we have a situation where we're spending more than our revenues currently. Nobody wants to say that, but it's in the math. And yet we're proposing all these extraordinarily expensive programs that'll continue. They had $2 million a year going into eternity for this housing trust. And in my region, they are literally taking big acreage parcels and rezoning them to try to put single apartments, very low-income housing. And I have multiple examples in reality. So I've actually taken some pictures of video. I've seen how Beaumont Health Lake Orion Complex is completely up for lease and closed. We have signs all over the place with big parcels for zoning change proposed. In fact, on Brown Road, my most offensive thing, they took out the entire woods for acres, literally acres. And they have a big signs that say, proposed zoning change. Oh my goodness. We're supposed to be talking about the environment, yet we're destroying our communities of the residents, and it's really offensive in the page one, where like between 158 and today's meeting too. There's how they expect to have to increase the taxes for inflation. Now, mind you, we just have been increasing salaries right and left, in spite of the fact we had 25% of our businesses as of June 9th that were gone post-COVID. So why are we increasing expenses of salaries? Why are we spending money on people we don't even know? And why are we welcoming people illegally? That's what I want to know. Please start enforcing our laws, support our
Please
sheriff
wrap up your
completely,
comments, Ms. Kennedy.
and ban all this nonsense about the housing trust and housing initiatives that are not in the
Ms.
best
Kennedy,
interest
your time
of
is
my
up. Thank you.
Of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to address us at this time on anything on today's agenda? Seeing no one, I will close public comment. We will move on to communications. I need a motion to receive and file the communications. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Any comments? Then please prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, we have some presentations today. First is item 8A, the Workday Financials Implementation Status Reports for February and March 2022. I need a motion. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Long, to receive and file this presentation. Yes. And with us, we have Mr. Kyle Jen and Mr. Mike Tim. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning. The floor is
So-
yours.
We'll just provide a quick update in terms of status on the Workday financial project. Certainly happy to answer any questions you may have. We are, as we sit here today, basically 5 weeks out from the new financial system going live. So this is a very busy time for all the staff involved. At a high level, we have wrapped up end-to-end testing, so that's the process of basically everybody sitting in a room and making sure that the system works in a test environment, and is able to process all the financial transactions that the county does on a daily basis. We are moving into the training phase, so I think just yesterday was the first training session for county staff involved in financial transactions, whether it be purchasing, grant management,
Expense reports.
expense reports, as the key 3 areas that will affect staff outside of, folks who do financial work on a daily basis. So that training is happening now, so that staff are prepared to, continue with the county's business after the new system goes live. So we're on schedule for the go live. We're on track in terms of budget. I would just note there are 3 risks noted. There is one red box on this report. That box is red basically just because staff are working overtime and are really stretched right now. That comes with the territory for a project this big. So, we should take the opportunity to thank all of the staff publicly across fiscal services, purchasing, the treasurer's office, and Mike's team that's playing a major support role for all their efforts. This is a huge endeavor. I mean, we're moving all of the county's financial data out of one IT system into another IT system, ensuring that, that the data's all there and, that the business of the county can continue. So the second risk there is integrations. So that term means all the other systems the county has that involve financial transactions has to be able to talk back and forth and move data. We are in good shape there. The one key item is that the Treasurer's Office DevNet system is going live this month, and then we'll have to integrate in. But we have a good plan that A, we're confident that's going to happen, and B, if it doesn't happen, there are contingency plans in place to ensure that work can continue. And then the last key risk is reporting. I think this goes with the territory on a project like this in terms of all the reports that have to be generated. Those have been prioritized. The ones that are absolutely needed on day one will be ready to go, and others will be developed as we go along. So that's my overview. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mike?
Nothing significant to add other than to highlight this integration piece. That is an are that we have been working on extensively, and in those cases where integrations are not quite ready to go live, I've also worked with the departments to make sure that we have manual procedures basically in place for continuity of operations, as well as then to do catch-up transactions within a month or two after the go live, as the new system integrations do work. So we had, I think it was in the order of 55 fairly major integrations with various systems, including undoing things. As you'll recall, we implemented Workday on the HR side nearly 2 years ago. So we have been doing HR functions in Workday for that period of time while we continue to do the financial side. Example, payroll. We had to build an interface between our old PeopleSoft system and Workday so that people would get paid, as well as with the Treasurer's Office to actually remit the payments. Those integrations need to be undone because now Workday will handle that seamlessly between the Workday Financial and Workday HR. So that has all been tested as well. So it is a Herculean effort. And the good news is I think the team sees the finish line. They are exhausted, they're exasperated, but there is an end in sight. And that's I think the hope that we all have going forward. The end-to-end testing was very successful. As Kyle mentioned, there are some bumps in the road, but nothing that will prevent us from continuing to operate, and we'll work through those bumps as we go live. So thank you again for your support.
Okay, thank you. I will open it up to the commission at this time, starting with Commissioner McGilvery.
Yeah, what is the go-live date that you have scheduled?
May
You want
9th.
to take that one? Oh.
May 9th is when most people will see the impact. We actually have some freezes occurring prior to that, so we will not do changes in some of the financial systems around financial org structures. Those freezes are going to be in place here shortly in April. Purchasing systems will have to stop for a short period of time and or do some manual work for purchasing so that we don't create a bunch of transactions in the old PeopleSoft system that we then have no way to move into Workday. So some of the go live is actually starting as we speak. We're kind of in a dress rehearsal mode starting this week, and different functions will slowly have a stop period, and the go live date when I'm going to start submitting an expense report will be May 9th. So that first week of May, that first full week of May, well, I guess it's the second week, sorry. That will be a key week of transactions getting caught up. But we're going to freeze databases. We've got, mountains of data that we have to migrate from PeopleSoft into Workday, and the conversions that take place. So some of that is starting as we speak.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? I'll just say we're all happy to see it coming to a close.
Amen.
And I was trying to look it up, but I didn't find it. I would like to make note before we close this item that Mr. Tim has been given a very prestigious award in the world of IT, and I don't know what it's called, but I'd like you to tell us what you were rewarded for, because, I don't know.
Geek Award.
If you don't know Mike, he works so hard to keep things going on a subject. Most of us are all kind of like, we're trusting you, guy, So please tell us a little bit about your award, and then we'll go ahead and vote on your item here.
Thank you, Commissioner. So yes, there is an organization called Government Technology, which is focused on, it's really provides an opportunity for us to network with other large counties, with other small counties, with the large cities, to share some best practices. So it is a nationwide organization that every year kind of nominates, and they have a review process, and I was nominated within that organization for some of the work that we do as a county in that organization. In fact, I'll be at a conference with Government Technology next week. And the award is Top 25 Doers, Dreamers, and Drivers. So I was nominated for that and picked for that. So thank you.
Congratulations.
It's really, thank you. But it really is, there are times, and you all know this, when, each of us might just be the spokesperson. We might be the face of an organization, but there are, a couple hundred IT professionals that actually do all of the work. And we are a very passionate organization. We do a lot of good stuff, and I'm very proud, really, that the team is getting recognized for this too, because I'm nothing without all the work they did. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, let's go ahead and prompt the vote on the Workday Financials implementation item.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is a presentation on the fiscal year 2022 to 2024 Contingency Report approved through March 10th, 2022. I need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Cavell.
Good morning again. So you have before you the contingency report. This is a report that we provide throughout the year that provides an update in terms of, there are certain contingency accounts in the balance or in the included in the budget each year, for dealing with unanticipated smaller cost increases that may occur during the year. This provides an update. There are not a lot of new transactions since the last report, and most of these things you've seen previously as resolutions have gone through, so I will not go through this in detail, but we're happy to ask questions. Lynn Somkis is on the line if there are specific questions on some of the transactions.
Okay. I will open it up to the commission. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Jen? If not, let's prompt the vote, please.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Okay, next item is, the one we're all waiting for, FY 2023 to 2025 preliminary revenue estimates. I need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Cavell. All right, Mr. Jen again.
All right. All right, there's the slide. So this is kind of like opening day, I think, for our process, with all of you as we work through the budget for the upcoming 3 years, and work to deliver you a budget recommendation in July, and work together to adopt that by the end of September. So you can feel the buzz in the air.
We're so excited.
The voice of the turtle is heard.
Right, absolutely. So I want to walk you through, if we can move to the next slide, the agenda for today, an update in terms of some of the key economic indicators that affect our budget, particularly on the property tax revenue side, and then talk about what the actual property tax values that have come in for this year are and how those affect our revenue estimates. And then just a sneak preview, in terms of what our continuing goals for the budget are and what our approach is going to be this year. Next slide, economic update. We can move to the first chart. So these next few slides here show trends in the housing market. Over the course of the year, obviously there's a seasonal effect to, stronger housing demand and sales during the summer. So the green line is 2018 trends, the blue line is 2019 trends, and the yellow line is 2020 trends, and then the red line is the most recent year in 2021. We're working on getting these updated with the last few months, but you can see the general trend for the year. So the first slide here is the number of listings within the county. So this is basically a measure of supply. You can see that supply in 2021 is much lower. I think most people have heard anecdotal stories from folks looking to buy a house. There is not a lot of supply out there right now. If we go to the next slide, though, the level of sales is actually very comparable to previous years. In 2020, you can see the dip, when COVID first occurred. But other than that, it's been pretty stable across the year, and that reflects obviously that there's strong demand out there in the housing market. There are more people who want to buy a house than there are houses available. So sales are still strong. On the next slide, that basically means that when houses are on the market, they're moving quickly, with the average number of days, being as low as basically 3 weeks. And this slide wouldn't even reflect a house that didn't get to the point of getting listed. And, we know there's a lot of sales happening like that through word of mouth. I was able to buy my house actually that way last year. So all of that then on the next slide, basic laws of supply and demand mean that prices are going up. So you can see the red line, a significant increase in the average price per square foot compared to previous years. And then on the next slide, which measures the sale price versus the list price, that red line is basically people are getting at least what they're asking for their houses. And you can see that, during the period of high sales during the summer last year, people were getting above list price. And again, these are averages. We've all heard the stories about people getting, 10, 20% above list price. But the average data bears that out. So, all of that is to say, a very strong housing sales market, which affects, assessed values, and those values all pop up and are taxed at the full assessed value. Second key factor on the next slide, in terms of the property tax base, is the level of new construction. So this slide shows the number of housing permits in the county over the last 6 years. You can see the last 3 years have been a little lower than the previous 3 years. However, still, pretty strong numbers, not a huge drop off there, and the houses that are being built are at, are at higher prices. So still strength there. If we go to the next slide, this is a long-term trend across the entire southeast Michigan level. You can see at the very end there in the yellow, in the end of the blue actual and the yellow forecast, we are seeing slowing permits over the last 6 to 9 months, which we think is a function of supply chain issues. We're about, over the last 9 months, we are about 30% down from the same 9 months the prior year, although although declining off a pretty strong base. So that's certainly a variable that we are keeping a close eye on going forward. Next slide. Obviously the topic of the day in terms of the economy is inflation. This chart is from the economists at the University of Michigan, showing the spike in inflation that started late last year and is continuing into this year. We are in pretty unprecedented territory. This chart goes back to the 1970s. This is the highest level of inflation certainly since Proposal A was adopted. So we're paying very close attention in terms of how that affects the mechanics of Proposal A and the mechanics of Headley and drives our revenue. The next slide is a forward-looking forecast. So this data is based on a monthly survey of economists that Bloomberg does. The gray line is actual inflation data, so you can see 2019, 2020. We were at or below 2%, which is pretty consistent with what we've seen over the last 10 plus years. In 2021, that number jumped up to almost 5%. And then you can see the range of forecasts that are out there. So the blue line is the median forecast among economists, which has inflation, peaking at 6% in the current year and then declining back down toward that 2% range. The green line, has, at least one economist out there has inflation coming down more quickly than that. But then I think you're starting to see more economists, who are up on that orange line and expecting inflation to potentially be higher than 6% by the time we get to the end of this year, and then potentially more persistent inflation in the 5% range going forward. So we're tracking this closely. I certainly don't pretend to be smarter than this group of economists, so we're going to make sure we're prepared for all of these potential outcomes, and we're going to be conservative because assuming higher inflation means assuming higher revenues, so we're not going to build in higher revenues resulting from higher inflation until we've actually seen the inflation, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Next slide talks about the impact of inflation on our finances. There's really 3 key impacts. First of all, certainly all of us as county employees are experiencing higher costs, as we're fueling up our cars or going to the grocery store. For those who rent their housing, there have been significant increases in rental costs. So we want to be cognizant of all of those impacts on our employees and on our ability to maintain and attract a competitive workforce. It also has an impact on the cost for us to procure goods and services. We have seen some increases, in prices, particularly in sort of the commodity category, starting with fuel. I think in other areas like IT purchasing, it's been more about delays in being able to purchase items as opposed to cost increases, but that situation continues to evolve. And then on the revenue side, higher inflation actually results in higher taxable value growth and higher revenue growth for the county because of the way Proposal A and Headley work. So first of all, under Proposal A, if a property has a taxable value below its assessed value, the taxable value can grow more quickly if inflation is higher, although that's capped at 5%, so taxpayers won't see more than a 5% increase in a given year, even if inflation is above that level. And then it also reduces or potentially eliminates, the need to do a Headley rollback. And we'll talk in a few moments about how that impacts the numbers going forward. So, speaking for the county executive administration, again, our approach here is going to be a cautious one. We're going to balance the impacts of inflation on our revenues, on our workforce, and on our budget in a cautious manner. Two key things. We're not assuming higher inflation beyond FY22 and FY23 in our revenue projections. We're going to consider and propose general adjustments in employee compensation as inflation is realized and within our available revenues. So we're not going to jump the gun, but we are going to react and be responsive as we have hard data to work from. Next slide then kind of summarizes the key uncertainties going forward. First of all, does housing demand remain as strong as it has been, particularly over the last year? Second of all, how do supply chain issues affect construction costs and the pace of new construction? Third, the question of inflation and whether it starts to come back down as we go into next year, or whether it's more persistent than that. And then fourth, with mortgage rates starting to creep up, how does that affect the housing market and housing sales? So we are watching all of these numbers on a monthly basis, and the revenue estimates I'm about to present to you on the property tax side, take a conservative approach in terms of each of these variables so that we're not over projecting our revenues, based on current trends. All right. Next slide, we're moving into the property tax values and revenue estimates section. We can go to the first chart. This is the standard pie chart. So this is based on the data in the 2020 Equalization Report, which is the next item on the agenda for your consideration and approval. This is pretty consistent with previous years across the county as a whole. Residential property makes up 75% of our taxable value, with commercial, industrial, and personal property making up the remaining 25%. So, across individual localities in the county, these numbers vary, and, the impact on their taxable values and projections is different depending on their mix. But for the county as a whole, the housing market really is the primary driver, which is why I walked through those slides in terms of where we are right now. Next slide shows a history on state equalized value or assessed value. Those are the green bars. Taxable value, which is the yellow or orange bars, and inflation. IRM stands for inflation rate multiplier, which is basically the same thing as consumer inflation, except when consumer inflation is above 5%. So you can see those last bars in 2022, the taxable value bar is at 6.5% growth across all property in the county. That is the highest figure we've experienced since 2001. So again, just an indicator of the strength out there in the housing market right now that's feeding our taxable value numbers for the current year. If we go to the next slide, this is a history, comparing state equalized value or assessed value versus taxable value. This gives you, a snapshot of the impact of Proposal A on our tax base. You can see that, coming out of the Great Recession, assessed value had basically fallen down to taxable value. As the economy and the housing market has rebounded, however, assessed value has grown at a healthy rate now for 10 years, and taxable value, because of the provisions of Proposal A, does not keep pace. Next slide. This is a snapshot out of the Equalization Report. So this is all of the townships in the county. Shows the growth in both assessed value and taxable value from 2021 to 2022. Again, strong numbers. Assessed value has grown by more than 5%. townships and taxable value for townships has grown at 6%. You can see from the percentages in that last column, with very few exceptions, strong growth across the entire county. And then the next slide shows the same numbers for cities in the county. Again, strong growth, actually a little stronger in total. I would particularly highlight the Pontiac row, which, when the equalization team showed me these numbers, my jaw kind of dropped. But taxable value in Pontiac has grown by 28%.
I know, wow.
Compared to the previous year. And that is not entirely due, but is largely due to Amazon. So, so $130 million in real and personal property from Amazon came online during this last tax year, related to their new facility, obviously located in the city. So,
All right, I'll take it.
Right.
and similarly, Hazel Park, 18% growth. That's also related to to a new warehouse facility, a new personal property coming online.
All right, Charlotte.
The one caveat, and I spoke to the deputy mayor in Pontiac last week about this. The one caveat is that the personal property side, continues to be a discussion item at the state level, with folks in the legislature having an interest in continue to expand exemptions and even proposing full repeal. So that's something to keep an eye on for all of us, but particularly I think for Pontiac. Next slide. This graph shows you, underneath those percent changes, there's really three things going on each year. One is the growth in the value of existing properties. Two is the level of additions, so new construction and properties coming online, so that's the blue bars. And then three is properties that are coming off the tax rolls, which are the losses in the gray bar. Again, you can see in 2022, very strong in terms of additions and new property coming online. We're at about 1.85 billion there, which is the highest number since 2006. That number is important because it affects our Headley rollback. If it's new property that's coming online, it doesn't affect our rollback. Next slide, tells the story of Headley rollback. So this is the county's operating millage. Going back to the beginning of Proposal A, you can see prior reductions that have been implemented in part because of Headley. As we go forward, in 2021, our tax rate was 4.0132. Our preliminary estimate, based on the numbers in the Equalization Report, is that we'll need to roll that tax rate back to 3.9688, and that's built into our revenue estimates. You can, if you squint there, you can see in 2023 we're actually expecting not to have a rollback because inflation is so high. But then we would expect continuing rollbacks beyond that. So, again, this will be the first year that the county's operating millage rate will fall below 4 mills. Next slide, shows the revenue picture, both historically and forecasted. The green line shows property tax revenues for the county prior to adjusting for inflation. We're certainly projecting continued strong growth. I would note that FY22 is the first year where property tax revenue will exceed the peak prior to the Great Recession. In nominal terms, when you adjust for inflation, you can see that we're still about 20% below inflation, and again, that's a function of Proposal A and Headley limiting our annual growth. The next slide then shows our property tax revenue projections in a little more detail. You've got 5 years of history there where you can see, we've had growth in the last column in our revenues of somewhere between 4 to 5% per year. For 2022, we are now projecting 5.3% growth. That's a function of the strong taxable value numbers that we just walked through. For 2023, we're projecting revenues of about 6% growth. Again, that's a big number, but it's based on conservative assumptions. We know that with inflation being higher, that's going to increase taxable values, but we are not assuming, that the housing market will stay as hot as it has been. We are not assuming, the same high level of construction. We're making sure we're erring on the side of caution there. And then in future years, assuming that things potentially return back to a normal state with growth of, again, on the conservative side of 3 to 4% per year. All right, that's the property tax estimate picture. If we want to go to the next slide, this is a really squinty slide. I've got, you've been provided the full PDF of all of our revenue estimates across each line in the budget. This is a snapshot of that. So the first line is taxes, which is primarily, our general operating property taxes. So for 23, we're projecting $286 million. Out of a total projected revenue of just short of $500 million. So property tax revenues continue to be well over half of our budget, and certainly the main driver. But other dollars you can see there in terms of federal and state grants, intergovernmental revenues, which includes our annual revenue sharing payment, the various charges for services that county departments receive, and then some miscellaneous items at the bottom. So important to note, property tax revenue growth is strong. We can't necessarily expect that for some of our other revenue sources. So you can see, moving out of 23 into 24 to 25, our total general fund revenue base is only growing between 2 and 3%. Next slide, I wanted to highlight one key adjustment that we're making in terms of a specific department's revenues. This was an item of some discussion last year too. So this chart shows what the blue line is actual collections across the clerk and register of deeds function. You can see historically about $18 million in collections that go into the general fund. That spiked up in 21 to about $24 million, which is a function of higher real estate activity. And then we're projecting that to fall back down in the ordinal line to something closer to the historical level. If you compare the line, which is actual collections, to the bars, which are the amounts assumed in the budget, historically there's been a lot of favorability there, about $4 million per year. As we closed out FY21, collections for the clerk actually came in about $10 million higher than what's in the budget. Last year in the budget that was adopted, we raised that revenue estimate by $2 million. And then in 23, we'll be raising it another $2 million. But just want to emphasize, we're just bringing that estimate up to sort of historical levels when things are on a normal trend, and not bringing it all the way back up to that FY21 level. Next slide is kind of the key takeaways on the revenue slide. Again, strong taxable value growth at 6.5%. If you compare the revenue estimates that are being presented here to the revenue estimates that the budget was based on last year, we're bringing up property tax estimates for the current fiscal year by about $7 million, and for the upcoming fiscal year by about $12 million. As we go forward, we talked about the Headley rollback to below 4 mils, and the fact that we're, assuming long-term growth of more like 3%. And again, our other general fund sources aren't growing at that same rate. We just highlight, the state budget situation has certainly flipped quickly from the negative to the positive. I'm hoping it's not because I left, but between the point I left and now the situation is completely reversed. There's a lot of money on the table at the state level. There are also a lot of tax cut proposals floating around, so we can't, be sure until there's a budget agreement in place how much of that revenue potentially flows to us. The governor's budget recommendation did include a very healthy revenue sharing increase, both a 5% ongoing increase and a 5% one-time payment. So we certainly hope the legislature, follows suit on a portion or all of that, but we have to wait to see what happens. So we're not going to assume that at the current time. And then on the subject of personal property taxes, in December, the exemption for smaller businesses was expanded from $80,000 to $180,000. There are dollars reserved to reimburse us for the loss we'll experience from that, which could be up to $1.5 million per year. But there's still work ongoing that we're monitoring and engaging with state policymakers, to ensure that there's a good mechanism in place and that those dollars are actually included in the budget. So, those are things to keep an eye on and to advocate with state policymakers as you're talking to them. Let me then flip to the last section in terms of our budget goals and approach. So anytime I talk about higher revenues, I have to make sure I highlight the fact that we do have, a number of expenditure pressures out there. As we closed out the FY22 budget, there was still a small structural shortfall left. Obviously, we made good progress last year in terms of workforce reductions and other adjustments to get to a truly structurally balanced budget. So that figure was about $4 million. It's our strong goal that the budget will bring you in July for the upcoming year will resolve that structural shortfall permanently. On the employee compensation side, we're currently budgeted for an increase of 2% per year. Obviously, inflation is running higher than that. We're seeing, both public and private sector employees account for that and provide higher increases in their employee compensation. So we'll be bringing a recommendation for the general salary increase for next year. Each percentage point above 2% has a cost of about $3 million general fund. We also have open negotiations with two of our larger unions, which could result in higher costs as those get resolved. On the facility side, these are the numbers just in terms of what's identified in terms of major maintenance and facility projects. As you're aware, we have Plant Moran in doing a more comprehensive assessment. I would expect those numbers to go up, in part just because construction costs are going up. On the IT side, Mike's department just received requests for 77 development projects across the full scope of county government, and they're in the process of vetting those in terms of the financial and other considerations. Enhancing our cybersecurity protections continues to be a priority. And then we've talked previously about the circuit court case management system. They're beginning the RFP process right now, so we won't know the exact cost on that probably for another year. But this is likely to be, a project on the scale of the Workday project in terms of complexity and potential cost. So, I highlight all of these things. Obviously, we're not going to tackle everything on this page in one budget. We're going to prioritize, and we're going to work within the dollars that are available. Next slide is continuing the workforce planning discussion that kicked off in December of 2020 when the board adopted the compensation plan to make our wages more competitive with the market that's out there for all of our county positions. Our goals here remain the same. We want to attract and retain a qualified workforce through competitive compensation levels. We want to allow long-term employees to voluntarily separate employment if that's the right move for them. We still have, a handful of employees that will be leaving us this year under that program. And then long-term, we want to work to identify efficiencies and reduce the county workforce through attrition, as we have IT tools that make our work more efficient and so forth. I think the key two developments from the administration's perspective since last year is one, the fact that higher, property tax revenues are significantly higher than projected last year. And then secondly, the fact that the ARPA dollars became available, those provide us resources both to deal with short-term costs for county government that are driven by COVID, as well as, programs to support our county residents and businesses. And that reduces the need to use county general fund for those kinds of things. So our plan last year had been to reduce the county workforce by 7 to 10% over 5 years. In light of these new developments, we instructed departments last week that the new goal is 4%, and we'd like to get that done this year. So over last year and this year, for those departments that hit their 4% target last year, we're not asking for additional reductions right now. For those that didn't get there, we are asking them to hit that 4%. There's a big asterisk on that, which we emphasize with departments. This is based on the numbers as they stand today. We're going to continue to ask them to work to find efficiencies and work to find areas where their workforce can be reduced, so that as we start to address those larger needs on the facility and the IT side, or in the event that something, happens with the economy that causes our revenue to fall, we're in position to be responsive to that. Next slide. I won't spend a lot of time here. These are the same 5 goals I think you've seen, with every budget since Dave Coulter became county executive. We're going to continue to drive forward on all of those, particularly the performance measurement. You heard in the State of the County speech, how we've stood up the dashboard, and county executive departments are going to start reporting and reacting to the way that their performance indicators are moving. Next slide. This is my favorite slide. I don't think it's anyone else's favorite slide, but just walking through, how we look at structural balance and how we calculate it. And again, emphasizing the goal, we want a structurally balanced budget where our ongoing operating expenditures are supported by the revenues we collect that year, and that any use of fund balance is for one-time things, that have a long-term payoff. In terms of the general fund balance on the next slide, so we just issued the annual financial report, which is available on our website last week. We closed out fiscal year 2021 with a $288 million fund balance. That's equal to about 60% of our annual general fund budget. It's up by about $21 million from the prior year. So we will be bringing to you with the second quarter forecast, sort of truing up our fund balance assignments compared to what was in the year-end report, because that number is actually higher than we thought it would be when we brought you the year-end report. So these numbers reflect the assignments we'll be bringing to you. We do have some planned use of fund balance, as we have that structural shortfall we still have to close, as well as items that were identified as one-time spending items in the last budget. That's $16 million. We have carry forwards where departments are completing one-time projects of $12.6 million. So if you take those two out, that leaves you with an available fund balance of about $259 million. The first and most important assignment out of that 259 is our rainy day fund, consistent with the fund balance policy that we worked to adopt with all of you last year. We're going to hold at least 25% of our annual general fund budget as a rainy day fund. That's clearly protected, that we're not going to use unless there's an actual decline in revenues. That's about $120 million. A 5% amount for non-economic risks at $24 million. We've actually used a portion of that for the Oxford response, although we've got the dollars to now true that back up to the 5% going forward. The $45 million is proceeds from property sales on delinquent properties. We continue to hold that for any outcome that could happen with the Raffaelli case. We've prevailed currently in the courts in terms of the decision not being retroactive, but we want to be careful there as we move forward and the plaintiffs appeal that. There are $12 million in sort of miscellaneous or grandfathered assignments, and that leaves us with $59 million in that strategic investment category, which would be for future investments, which we'll start talking about with this budget, but certainly won't spend all at once in terms of, one-time facility projects, IT projects, or other things that benefit county residents and businesses. And then last slide, our eye is always on the ball in terms of maintaining the AAA bond rating. We had that reaffirmed last year. We are actually meeting with the rating agencies next week because the WRC has a financing deal that's going through for Oakland Township. We'll be presenting the same information, and fully expect to get the AAA affirmed going forward. So with that, I will stop talking, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. I would ask, if you do have questions, will you request to speak through the thing so I can get through everybody? I let Mr. Jen just get through his whole presentation, so in the interest of time. So first up, I have Commissioner Powell.
So one of the questions I have, and it's just from my own understanding, and I will probably send you an email. I just wanted clarity and understanding on what is non-department, like what is examples of non-departmental charges for services, the investment income. What is an example of something we received? Other revenues and indirect cost recovery and transfers in. I just want to kind of understand what type of funding or what examples of things that we've received that reflect in those amounts.
Sure.
Just so I can kind of understand better what does that look like, because one thing in particular, the indirect cost recovery, I know we charge, I think that got to do with the cities, right? Something with the cities, whatever. I'll just ask you the questions. We can go from there. So I just wanted to put that on your radar.
I'll give you the one or two sentence version of each of those.
I don't
No?
want you to do that. I want because
okay.
I want it in writing. I'm just letting you know that I'm
Right.
going to send you an email.
Right. And
My
the budget
next-
document does actually, in that section of the budget on revenues, have a short description of each of those, but I can send
Okay,
you
yeah,
the-
but I just need more
Yep.
examples of what that could be like. I want additional of that. So thank you. I know y'all kind of give us a lot of information, but that's from my own understanding. And then you had answered the other two. The one about the other departments who already committed to that 4%. I was just concerned to know, did they have to do any additional? Because we were told by the executive office that that was not going to be something that they were going to do moving forward this year. Is going over that 4%, that you're asking them to reduce their departments and stuff.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so those departments who hit the 4% reduction target last year are not being asked for
Right.
additional reductions at this time. Those departments that came in, if you came in at 2%, we're asking you to do the additional 2% to get to 4. If you came in at 3%, we're asking you for the additional 1%. So we can kind of close that out. I mean, some departments did feel they needed a longer period of time, but we want to make sure they follow through on what was asked of everybody last year.
Okay, and then thank you for pointing out, because my third question was about the where that lawsuit, be it where it fall, where does that money come from, item line, because I knew it was somewhere under general fund.
Yep.
And then also I wanted to kind of remind my colleagues, these mics are live, so sidebar conversations y'all was having to be heard. I mean, where they hear it too, we got 12 people on there, so I was just making sure. Thank you.
But when you do speak, please pull the mics up close because it is kind of garbled to the outside world. So, yes, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Anybody else who has a question? I don't see anybody else has request. Oh, Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to it, but the pie chart that shows the county taxable value, it says real or personal property 5.5%. Does that mean that that we're actually collecting, or does that include the replacement revenue that the state sends in, because of the exemptions?
That's the amount that is not exempt and is actually being taxed. I'm looking at Terry Schultz from Equalization, and he's nodding his head correctly. So the dollars we get reimbursed from the state are accounted for separately.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Commissioner Moss.
I pushed the button. That's good. Okay.
You did.
Thank you for it's a very, very good presentation. It's excellent. Yeah, I got a question now. A couple. You say you're not assuming higher inflation beyond fiscal 22 and 23. How come?
Because we want to be conservative on our property tax estimates, and assuming higher inflation inflates our property tax estimates.
All right. Look at the pie chart, the real and where you've got the real property versus this commercial. Do you know what percentage of the commercial property is office?
I think
Offhand?
it's largely office, right? I don't know if you want to come up here, Terry, and help with that.
Quick and dirty ballpark is no problem. I've been to a lot of those.
You want to join us at the mics? That would help.
Terry Schultz is one of the chiefs in the Equalization Division, and
Welcome.
Yes, with regard to, I don't have an exact,
Pull your mic
It
up
doesn't-
close,
It doesn't
please.
have to be exact. Of the, of your commercial property, about what percentage of that or whatever, would that be office?
it's a majority, right? In a county like Oakland.
yeah, I would think so.
Like 55 or 75, or do you have any idea? I mean, I'm trying to narrow it down. I got a reason for asking.
I think
I'll take a
we'll
majority.
have to get back to you.
I'll take,
I don't wanna give
yeah, no
you- I don't
worries.
wanna
I'll
give
take
you
it.
this
Yeah, no
It's okay.
worries. No worries. Okay, the reason why I'm saying that is because I believe there is a shift in employment that will, has already led to changing in office use and, possible vacancies, reuse of office, mixed use, change in office. So the office sector, let's just say it's in flux, and I, would monitor that carefully. Looking down here, I noticed that you've got okay. Last time we were here, we had fun with the I word. I'm bringing up the R word. I love the Bloomberg. Bloomberg as a source is very good. I like it. I'm starting to use it actually. Chance of recession within 12 months, 100%, according to the Bloomberg service. Now, a lot of that due to monetary policy soaking up to combat inflation. To say that this is unprecedented, well, actually it isn't. Those of us who are unlucky enough to have been living through the late 70s and early 80s, not only were the fashions horrible, but the inflation was bad. I'll just say that we're going to have to be ready for the next step beyond the inflation, which is the recession. And that will impact revenue, that will impact costs, that will impact everything. And all your, just be sure that your assumptions do not ignore, I think, the very real chance. In my case, I believe it's a certainty of recession. And it's also possible that we will have the worst of all possible, which is going back to the 70s and 80s, which is stagflation was the word from then. And you have not only the stagnation and or recession, but inflation on top of that. So my guess, once again, is your first pressure will be from the unions and from your employees who are not going to be satisfied with 2% because the general CPI is at 7.1, and that's before the real kicker is getting in, which is food. It's like the third largest wheat producer just invaded the fourth largest. These are great assumptions, but I would. Once again, I threw the I word in last week. I'm going to throw the R word in now. And finally, when we talk about the 5 principles, making investments are good. My father was an ad man for marketing it with Dow Chemical, and he once told me, if they can sell consumption as investment, they can sell damn near anything. So when you're looking at an investment, be sure you got an ROI that you can say we're putting in 100 million or $1 million, we're going to get in $1 million too, rather than something rather vague. I'm happy to see this. This all looks very good, and the fact that you are concentrating on the impacts of inflation now is good. Take the next step, because I think in a year we're going to be well in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else have any comments?
If
on
I
this
can
item?
just respond briefly.
Oh, sure.
With respect to the R word, I mean, I think you're seeing economists certainly say there's a heightened chance of a recession. I don't know that I've seen, 100%. That's a pretty strong prediction.
Bloomberg says we're in it already.
And, there's a question of how deep a recession would be. We had another strong job growth report last week. So at the current moment, the labor market remains strong. So again, I would just reemphasize, I mean, I think three things I talked about here in terms of being prepared with the level of economic uncertainty there is right now, working with you to adopt the fund balance policy and having a clear and strong rainy day fund, is step one, because that's what a rainy day fund is for. Step two is, again, being cautious in all of our assumptions and working off the hard data we have now that we know is going to increase our revenues, but not assuming that's going to continue indefinitely. And then three is continuing to tell departments to be prepared and have an eye on, how they can become more efficient as we move forward here. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no other comments or questions, let's go ahead and prompt the vote on receiving and filing the, whatever this is called. Let me get back to the page. The preliminary revenue estimates.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, item passes. Next up is item 8D, again, a presentation, 2022 Equalization Report. I need a motion to receive and file.
Oh, this one's a resolution.
Oh, this is a resolution?
It's a recommended.
Okay, sorry. My coach has told me I didn't say that right. Recommending to the board the Equalization Report for this year. So Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Cavell. All right, Mr. Jens,
All
you
right,
again.
Last but not least, so we sort of reviewed the highlights of this in the previous presentation. The County Equalization Report, reports and affirms the assessed and taxable values across all localities in the county each year. This is due to the state April 15th, I think. Is that right, Terry? So Terry, along with the other two chiefs in equalization, Ann Grady and Tracy Jones, and their staffs are coming out of their busiest time of the year, both in terms of finalizing the tax rolls and going through the board of review process for the counties that we provide the assessing services for under contract, as well as reviewing, the assessed value amounts for the other localities that perform their own assessing services and pulling together this report. So I want to thank them for their hard work, and particularly the three chiefs who've seen all this work completed while we have a vacancy with the division director. So, again, at a high level, the total equalized value for the county in 2022 is $89.7 billion, which is a 5.8% increase over the prior year. And the total taxable value is $69.6 billion, which is a 6.5% increase from the prior year. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? I'll open it up to the commission. Seeing no one, I will just comment that I realize how complex this is every year for you to pull together and dealing with all of the local communities and so on. And I know it's been a difficult year because we do have a vacancy. And so I just want to commend the department for getting this done on time and getting it to us and allowing us to start the budget process on time, which starts with the equalization report. So I just want to say thank you very much. And with that, Commissioner Charles has something she wants to add.
Thank you, Chair. Recommend to the board had a different taste and smell than send and file and receive, or receive and file, excuse me. So I just wanted to be clear, we are approving just the simple fact that all of this purports to be accurate and true. That is our vote.
Correct.
yeah, as not being a scholar in this lane of work, of course, I rely completely on you guys to tell me what's good, what's not good, and as a result, I vote based on that. So I am hoping that we can continue to get those high ratings and things like that because of our reporting. And that's really all I had to say. It's just simply that we are typically not the subject matter experts here, that we're counting on our SMEs to make sure that we're making the right choices. So thank you. And I don't look good in orange. So that's all.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Charles. Okay,
Madam Chair, would that not be estimators?
estimators.
Estimators.
Yes,
Yes.
We would be the estimatees.
right. Okay, wow.
I feel much better
All
about
right,
that.
let's go ahead and prompt the vote. Move this baby along. I'll just say while we're waiting, there's a lot of information in the Equalization Report if you really want to dig into it and try and find things. It's interesting if you're into that sort of thing.
You can search all the way down to the property level on the Equalization website if you really want to.
Wow, very good. Okay.
Madam Chair, we have 8 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have item 9A, under Department Recommendations, Information Technology Budget Amendment, Website Content Management System Implementation. Welcome back, Mr. Tim. I need a motion to make a recommendation to the board. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Cavell. Go ahead, Mr. Tim.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. So this is a resolution to basically provide the allocation of funding. We have, and one of the numbers that Kyle had up there was kind of grandfathered assignments, if you will. If I remember right, it was in the order of 12 million. 330,000-ish, which is 360,000-ish, is for this resolution, which is a contract with Granicus. Granicus went through the RFP process. We had 10 county departments, including the courts and the sheriff's office, as well as departments underneath the county executive. So it's a full county implementation of the county website. So it is a very extensive RFP process, very extensive review process, and Granicus was the winner of that award. So this project is to implement the new website content management system. So our current oakgov.com, which consists of nearly 270 pages of information, 2,700 pages, across all of the departments. So that content will get migrated into this new system. It's sort of like building a new foundation for our house, if you will, if you look at the website as a house. So that content will get moved. Granicus will provide the support to do that. The old content management system is end of life. We have been on it for nearly a decade. It's a Microsoft platform that Microsoft is basically deprecating, or again, it'll go end of life. So that's the reason for this project and the reason for the RFP and the process that we went through. So this is really the allocation of the funds to allow us to award that contract and do the project. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tim. With that, I'll open it up to the commission. That was me. Commissioner Charles.
Thank you. I wanted to just inquire with you on the uptime when those transfers happen. Should we expect any noticeable happenings, or would it be one of those times where you'll say maintenance will be happening over the weekend, so expect to have some lag there? And are we saying that the layout of the website's changing in terms of where things are placed? And then if so, who did they talk with about scenarios of where things should be placed?
Great question. So that's actually the next project. That'll be, putting shutters on the outside of the house and putting a new roof on the house. This is the core infrastructure. So the information architecture, the organization of that information is part of the next project. And the look and feel, there will be some changes to the look and feel with this migration, but the fancier graphic artist kind of work where, we'll work very closely with the Department of Public Communications and every other department and office in the county that is a stakeholder that has pages. They will all be involved in that design. So that's the next project after this core infrastructure is complete.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next up, we have item number 9B, designating financial institutions as authorized depositories for public monies. And I believe we have our county treasurer, Mr. Wittenberg, with us. And I'll take a motion from Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner McGilvery. Good afternoon.
It is afternoon now. Yeah, good afternoon. So thank you for having us here. From our team, we also have Jody Weiser-Defoe, who's the Chief Deputy Treasurer, Natalie Neff, who is our Investment Administrator, Ross Gavin, who's over there as well, who is a Deputy Treasurer, and then Angelica, who is our student working in the office at this time and goes to Wayne State University. So want to make sure we recognize who's here with us. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity to chat. I know there's 2 different agenda items, so I'll talk about this one first. It's a request to authorize depositories for public funds. In 2009, the board approved allowing any credit union in compliance with NCUA. And in 2019, the board approved a resolution regarding non-credit union financial institutions located with physical branches inside Oakland County. And it seems like, in our thought, is a good idea to combine these into a single resolution, and that's what we have here for your approval. We are seeing mergers and acquisitions in the financial sector, and the Community Bankers Association has even said markets like Southeast Michigan could support up to 10 additional community banks. So therefore, we're asking for your approval to authorize any financial institution with physical branches in the state of Michigan, which is also state law. It's required that they have to have physical branches here in the state of Michigan, and they are regulated by the FDIC or NCUA, and then they meet the objectives of our investment policy as authorized depositories. And so that's our request. Obviously happy to take any questions, but that's a little bit of the background and what we're here today for and what you have in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Long.
Okay, I just have a question. Looking at these deposits, where we can deposit, they're all old resolutions. Is there a new list somewhere? I mean, because like TCF is taken over by Huntington now, and I'm just looking, where's the new list of?
So that's kind of what we are proposing here, is that we will, instead of listing them out specifically,
Okay.
is that as long as it falls within all of these parameters here, that we are able to utilize them.
Okay, because like Oakland County Credit Union's Vibe. and-
Yep. So
all
that's why instead of having to redo that all the time,
Okay,
that's why I was saying we would combine like what we did, whereas for credit unions, it was just an authorization for anyone that, fulfills all of those requirements. This would do the same thing for banks.
okay, so you're not going to list them out like these other
Nope.
resolutions in 2009?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
If nobody else has any comments, I'll just clarify. So what you're doing is you're actually allowing us, this would allow us a broader range of banks to be investing our funds in. One of the issues I've always had with having a list that, we kind of control is, how do we know we're not just giving investments to our buddies, right? This instead says you have to, whatever institution it is, has to meet the requirements of the investment policy of the state as well as the investment policy here, and that's how we're protected. If you invest in Bank XYZ and I go, look, I should be able to see that they meet all of those requirements.
Yep.
Okay. And by listing them by name, we run into this issue where the mergers and acquisitions immediately make the documentation out of date, right?
For the most,
Or
I mean, in
could-
there it says like any subsequent merger acquisition that's in there, but it also, we're talking about new banks, and the goal is, right, to as Community Bankers Association talks about, is that there's room for 10 additional community banks in the area, and so that's kind of what we're talking about.
So it allows you flexibility and probably
right.
saves work in the long run because you're not doing these little pencil checks on stuff that it's just covered because of the policy. Okay,
Yes.
appreciate
We have
that.
a very thorough vetting policy where we use, there's many entities out there that kind of rank banks as to, how safe they are, how their local lending operates. It kind of gives them these grades and these categories. We have always used those. That has been like kind of one of the foundations of how we make decisions as to where we place money and place investments.
Excellent, thank you.
And then as
Okay.
you see on here, there's also, right, like conflicts, right? If there's a conflict, we won't invest. When it talks about on here, the no deposit shall be made into a financial institution if an elected official of Oakland County or appointed official of the county treasurer is employed by or is an officer or director of said financial institution. So we are trying to eliminate those conflicts of interest as well.
Good, good, thank you. Okay, if nobody's got any other questions or comments, let's please prompt the vote.
Oh, there we go.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next up then, we have same group of folks discussing the investment policy of Oakland County, item 9C.
Thank you. Yeah, I know when Kyle was presenting, you said everyone was looking forward to Kyle's presentation. I know this isn't as exciting, but we think it's just as important, so.
Okay,
so
before we
this-
go on,
yeah.
I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Cavell. I'm sorry, that was my fault. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this one is updating our investment policy, and the last time we updated our investment policy was actually April 2001. So that's why we're here today. But just so you all know, Public Act 20 of 1943 at the state level kind of dictates what we can do and what we can and can't invest in. So what we are recommending today, there aren't a whole lot of changes that we're requesting, and then the few changes that we are requesting are relatively minor. And the draft policy that's in front of you has been reviewed by Baird, our municipal advisor, our colleagues in management and budget, and board staff. Additionally, the proposed language mirrors approved recommendations from, and these are groups working in this world, the Association of Public Treasurers of the U.S. and Canada, the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association, and the Michigan Government Finance Officers Association. It is, in essence, to give us more flexibility and hopefully more yield within the constraints of Public Act 20, which we were mentioning before. The main changes that we are requesting are extending the duration of an investment from 3 years to 5 years, and raising the maximum we can invest in a particular security type from 15% to 25%. And those are federal agencies such as Farmer Mac, Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal Farm Credit Bank. Those are allowable security. That's an allowable security type that we utilize to achieve greater yield. Another change is to incorporate in our current practices to consider Oakland County specifically, and then Community Reinvestment Act rating. So that's CRA, the rating with the CRA, and that focuses on borrowers' needs in low to moderate income neighborhoods, as well as environmental, social, and governance standards as they further develop. And these considerations are all subsequent to our 3 main requirements that we do, the SLY acronym: safety first, then liquidity, then yield. And the last requested change is for the policy to come back to the board at least every 5 years for approval. So it's not 20 years between when the policy is approved by all of you. So that's what's in front of you, and obviously we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this forward. It kind of came out after the last, I think, bond meeting that they had, that we were getting an indication that we were now going to start to be judged by things like the ESG. And for the life of me, I don't understand what that has to do with this, but the environmental, social, and governance ESG factor in that. Is that just a thing everywhere now that we're being judged on? I don't know what that has to do with financial or whatever. But.
Well, so what it is, again, our main focus is safety, liquidity, yield, right? Those are the three things we look at, number one, and then kind of what we added is making sure we're investing with good community partners is the way I would look at it. As you said, as you see, there's the Community Reinvestment Act rating that they are rated on based on again, they're focusing on borrowers' needs in low to moderate income communities. So we are, in essence, again, that is like fourth on the list, if you will, but it's making sure that they are doing things properly and we're not investing in something that, would be like a stain on the county, if that makes sense. And it's not the top priority.
I'll jump in and say ESG considers environmental, social, governance issues that may impact whether an investment is a good investment or not. For example, we don't want to be invested in Russian oil. Okay? That's what those kinds of things consider.
And separately, so serving on, and Chair Markham and I also sit on the retirement board, separate from this, but we are actually part of an ad hoc committee talking about ESG investments, and we can tell you right now that it's still in its infancy, that there's a lot more that needs to be done, and so that's why that isn't our sole basis here, it's just a consideration. But we have that in there because we are updating the policy, and I think it's worthwhile to consider it. But that's not going to dictate anything and everything that we're doing. Right, if that makes sense. So I appreciate that question.
Put it in perspective.
Yeah.
Yep.
Commissioner Powell.
I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a little off topic, but I just wanted to kind of put on your radar, just for our commissioners, that I know you all have the, what is it, the sell of homes, what is it?
Oh, the auction? The
Yeah, the
land sale
auction is
auction?
coming up, and I know that a lot of things you all, I've been in contact with them. I know some things is changing in the process of how y'all doing it. Is there any way you all can eventually send an email to commissioners just to let us know that process, what is the new things, just in case we're asked by our constituents on how it's moving forward, because we know we haven't had it in, 2-3 years now?
Correct.
Yeah, and I know some things are changing in process and stuff, so I know it's off, sorry, y'all don't come. It's lovely to see you all.
Great to see you. I know that's,
And so
you
it's
have
on
us
my
here,
mind,
so,
and I
yeah.
said, oh my God, let me just ask them, because I know it's around the corner, well, it's coming soon.
It'll be in August.
August.
Well, we got time.
We
So
got a little
thank
time.
you.
You're
Just
welcome.
If you can, just share that
Yep.
information.
That's-
Send it to Joanne.
We'll make an
she'll get it to
announcement,
us.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything we're doing in our office, please feel free. If you have questions, thoughts, suggestions, we're all ears. We're partners with all of you, so please.
Okay. All right. If there are no other comments or questions, let's go ahead and prompt the vote on the investment policy.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can take just a moment of personal privilege here, I see him shaking his head in the corner here, but Ross Gavin has been working in our office for nearly 10 years and is going to be leaving us on April, I think it's 20th is his last day. He is going to work for a Michigan Environmental Council. And it's something I know he's really passionate about, and we are sad to see him go, but we are excited for this new opportunity for him and just want to wish him all the best and just want to acknowledge Ross for all of his hard work for the county over the last 10 years.
Yes, thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
I'm not senioritis right now.
Don't be a stranger. You have my email. You have my email. I do. Yeah, okay. All right, next up, we have item 9D, Economic Development, Business Development Resolution, proposed City of Birmingham Corridor Improvement Authority, tax capture, affirm the opt-out decision. We have with us Ingrid Tai, who's right here. I need a motion. Somebody, Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Long. She didn't know she raised her hand.
Yeah, no, that's good.
All right. Turn. Welcome.
Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Okay. We'll get started. Okay. So, Commissioners, today in front of you, we also have Core Counsel on the line, too. We have Bill DiBiase also. Hello, Bill. Also have one of my staff members, Tim Kolbeck, who's in the room. And then Brett Rassigan over our planning division is also on the line. I think he's behind the scenes, and so if there's further questions. But the resolution that you have in front of you, I'm going to set the context first and let you give you the background to this and then explain the resolution. Several years ago in 2015, the city of Birmingham came to Oakland County they proposed a corridor improvement authority and a project, and they came forward, proposed that CIA, and then the county at that time, as per law and as per county policy, opted out within that 60-day period. And then what happens is the county and then that respective community go into negotiation for the contract for the TIF. During that period, unfortunately, the city of Birmingham and the county could not come to agreeable terms. They reached an impasse, and the topic was essentially just put on ice. They just basically it just sat on the back burner. Within this last year, City of Birmingham came back to Oakland County. They resuscitated this plan, and they've made several updates to the Corridor Improvement Authority. They did have a public hearing the end of February, and it was approved at the City of Birmingham, and so now it is before you today. The miscellaneous resolution, if you read through it, the entire thing, it does go into detail and the timeline in which this project started, 2015, establishing the CIA, proposing the TIF plan and the tax assessment, everything on that, and then it goes into the fact that it was brought back to the table. So today, what we're asking, and this miscellaneous resolution, is to opt out, again, as per policy, to allow then Core Counsel to go into negotiation with the City of Birmingham for the tax capture for this project. So if Bill, and my question for you is, I don't know how much, given that the timeline of today, how much detail that you want us to go into. Commissioner, we're happy to paint more detail if you'd like, or we can just keep moving forward.
What's the sticking point?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the sticking point?
Right. I don't think we need a lot more detail unless the commissioner has a question.
25 words or less. What's the sticking point?
Well, Bill, do you want to go a little more into the legal piece of it? Because it really came down to
Short.
Yeah.
the short 25 or less version, Bill.
Well, Ingrid, you did a great job of presenting it as Ingrid's alluded to. This is, in a sense, deja vu all over again. We did opt out in 2015, and we initiated an attempt to arrive at a contract with Birmingham Corridor Improvement Authority in order to permit some capture. I was not involved in that. Joellen Shortley was involved in that. As I understand it, part of the sticking point was a clawback provision. This particular project focuses on building of a parking structure in the Triangle District of Birmingham, and there was no clear timeline for the construction of that project. And the sticking point was, well, if the project never gets built, do we get our tax capture back? Because that was the purpose for which they were capturing. And apparently, and again, I was not involved in it, but that's where it fell apart. I'm gleaning this from reading the minutes of the Birmingham CIA and getting some information and doing some historical background on it. However, as Ingrid said, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No,
All
you're
right.
good.
So I just want to be sure, because I go back, is that the sticking point is the clawback provision, because they want to build a parking structure. But if they don't build the parking structure, we're losing all this tax stuff, and we don't want to just give it away. Yes.
Correct.
Is that a yes?
That's
good.
correct.
Were you at the city of Birmingham when it first came?
No, so that that was before my time.
Yeah, now Tom Marcus is back, so we're finally getting this done. And now you want to go back to the negotiating table and see if we can work this out.
Correct,
Right?
correct.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
Anybody else? All right, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up,
Thank you.
we have item 10A, under Public Health and Safety Committee recommendations, the Sheriff's Office reorganization of the department, position upgrade, and creation of a new division. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Welcome. I'm just going to get some water.
Good afternoon.
Oh, okay. I'll be right back.
I get to talk.
Okay.
I've been talking and...
The sheriff's looking to reorganize. Sorry. You guys go ahead. To create a new division called Technology, Information, and Innovation. This is large in part to the coming body cameras. That's going to be a huge event for us, and trying to get that set up. So it would require one position upgraded. We're also going to transfer some other units from other areas, and we're asking for your approval.
All right, I apologize.
No worries.
Okay. The floor is yours. Oh, didn't we have a motion? I thought we did.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
They finished. Take a vote. They waiting on you to say vote or ask questions.
All right.
So do you have any questions?
Do I have any questions? No, I'm good. All right. Do we have quorum still in the room?
We have
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can vote. Okay.
Keep it moving.
All right. If the room is comfortable, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Can't they just come back and tell her they want a yes on this? Yeah. Okay. Oh, they
Well,
can't.
not if we were done with the vote and the vote's announced.
It's fine.
Oh, you the chair. You caused it. Okay. All right,
I
Chair.
have been asked to try and keep this meeting moving because
Got it.
it's got an agenda that's,
long.
long. So,
Madam
Okay.
Chair, you have 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, motion carries. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we have item B, Public Services, 10B, Public Services Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center donation acceptance of a gift to the Oakland County Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center. Moved by Commissioner Moss, supported by
He didn't give you any of this?
Commissioner Kowal.
What?
Yeah.
Very generous. He knows them.
You know the donor?
Yeah.
Or you did know the donor?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I knew him pretty well. He was in police reserves with me back in the 80s, I guess it was. And to look at his house, you would never know that he had that kind of money. So when I saw this, I was amazed. But yeah, he was in police reserves. Like I say, he ran for mayor, didn't get in, but he did run for it. And it's just amazing to me.
Cool.
Just absolutely amazing.
Cool. Do we have anybody from animal control or whatever to talk about this at all? No?
It passed unanimously in public health yesterday.
Okay. No, that's okay. No, we don't need to. We're good.
It's
We're
pretty
good.
simple. We're taking it, putting it in the legacy fund, and then we got to come back to you to ask how to spend
For
it.
projects.
Right. Okay, I just have a couple of comments about animal shelter and animal control. I would like Oakland County Animal Control to consider spay and neuter for Oakland County, and with,
For cats, correct?
cats and dogs. Okay, I'll tell you how this came to me. I have a friend who has a dog, and they are economically challenged somewhat, and their dog needs to be neutered. And it's a big expense if you just try to get it done at your vet. And the Humane Society even charges, I think, $50. I don't think we do it. And I guess that's for the general public. I know.
think we do for cats, right? For, not for the general public, but we have trapping,
Right, and I know that if strays come in and then you adopt, if dogs too, you adopt them out,
Right.
they are neutered
Right.
by animal control. I know that happens because we got a dog that way.
I'll
But
have a
I'm talking
conversation
about
with
the
Barb.
general public, you
I have a
know?
conversation with Barb and Bob about, how we can expand our programming. But I think that when we use our legacy fund dollars, it's really, geared towards a kind of, a project versus programming.
Right,
Right.
right. I get that. It's just something that's come up a couple of times with people that I know. And we all know if we can spay and neuter all these animals that are out there, we're not going to have as many of them, and so the costs are down and the public is safer and so on. So anything we can do to help the pet owners who want to be responsible, I'm in favor of, so I won't belabor the point. All in favor of accepting this generous?
So we're doing a roll.
Oh, we're doing a roll call, right, right. Please prompt the vote. That's what I meant to say. Don't mind me, I've been here a while today, so. Okay. That's a lot of money for the dog shelter.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent. Always like accepting money from, like that. All right, next up, we have item 10C, which is Health and Human Services Neighborhood and Housing Development Resolution establishing the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Cavell. And we have with us Rudy Hobbs and Shane Baez.
Mr. Housing.
Yes. My God.
Well, we haven't seen people for so long, you know. Everybody's been on Zoom. It's like, is that who that is?
Hey, how about we do this for the second time? Shane, you want to just give broad strokes?
Yeah.
And then we can jump right into questions.
Right. So the miscellaneous resolution in front of you for establishment of the Housing Trust Fund has two main things. One is the structure, the administrative structure to administer the funding, in which we're asking for creation of 2 part-time positions supported by the funding we're requesting, and that is a manager and a coordinator to help administer those funds as they come in. Along with that administration structure that's going to be within our division, we are also asking for the creation of Housing Trust Fund Board to help oversee, approve, evaluate various proposals, funding priorities, and to work with those division positions and classifications that are going to be brought in. As it is an approving authority, it would be open and subject to the Open Meetings Act as well. The other side of the coin, we're talking about the financial support for it. Is one-time infusion of ARPA funding, $5 million, and then ongoing annual funding of $2 million, and that is to help create a sustainable and successful housing trust fund over the length of time. Those are the big, broad strokes. I don't know if you want to jump in on anything else right there, if we just want to go to questions.
No, let's just go to questions.
All right.
So let me just make sure I understand. The initial creation of this is with a $5 million infusion from ARPA,
Yes.
which is supposed to be geared toward underserved and unserved populations and so on. So this consistently fits with that. But ongoing, years out, year 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, we are going to be actually providing $2 million from the budget every year to sustain this. So it's being created with ARPA money, but long-term, it will be sustained as a budget item.
Yes, I think, one of the things that, I felt very strongly about, and I think that, when Shane and his research, in terms of successful housing trust, to have a sustainable funding source was important, right? Instead of having, relying on gifts and grants and, those things kind of go in and out depending on the year. And how well the year does, So I think, having a sustainable source puts us in a position where, there's predictability, and predictability, means a lot to developers. And then the other piece, too, one of the things I kind of really give a really strong nod to, with Carrie and Gordon, who were in the housing division before Shane and his team, they created a revolving loan fund, basically, with our home dollars. They took dollars from 1975 to date. Now, those dollars are still out in the community working to help people, make renovations to their homes, right? It's almost a $57 million fund right now. And I'm hoping that, what we will create, this group will create, is, with our housing trust, that long after any of us sit at this table, that we'll still be having dollars that started working in, 2022, that will be working, in the community, helping, create affordable opportunities, well into the future. And I think that's where that $2 million comes into.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cavell.
Just real quick, it's a $5 million appropriation of ARPA and a $5 million assignment.
Yes.
Thank you, okay.
Oh, okay, thank you. I had that wrong. Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you. Is there any provision in here for the local units of government that the CVTs, that they play a role in these coming into their community? Is there any kind of approval process, or how are they, able to have some say-so over this process?
Well, like with any development proposal in any municipality in Oakland County, we have to abide by those local municipality zoning approval processes, et cetera. And that's something that we would be working with those developers and those other funders to make sure that the local municipalities are on board with whatever project and whatever local approval processes they have in place.
This is simply a gap financing tool, right? When there's a gap in the financing and the development, this kind of helps us, helps a developer close the gap. So, the initial, conversations are with those communities. It's not with Oakland County in terms of our policies and where we want to go, but what exists in zoning laws at the local level.
Okay, Commissioner Moss.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand what we're doing. We're starting the Oakland County Housing Trust Fund, which is to be overseen by the Housing Trust Fund Board. The board, which is made up of, that would be be it further resolved, number 5, the seven members, and that the trust fund is to be administered by the Neighborhood and Housing Development Division of the County Executive, right? Am I good?
So far, so correct.
So far, so good. Well, good. It's funded by the one-time $5 million from ARPA and the one-time $40,000 from the general fund, and then the $2 million annually from the general fund. It's sourced from state revenue sharing. So the $2 million is going to come from revenue sharing from the state of Michigan. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, former State Representative Hobb and former State Representative Kowal, and myself, we all, and all those who've been here know that when times get tough for the state, they don't share.
No, they don't.
They definitely don't. They definitely don't share.
Well, I think you and I served in the toughest times in the state.
We served in the toughest times. Certainly, they were very tough. They were exceedingly tough. Revenue sharing-
Colwall was sitting right across the aisle from me.
That's right. And revenue sharing was, so just to talk about sustainability of a source that is unstable, to say, just to say that, because the state, as we know, because when we were sitting here, we talked about all those butt heads up in Lansing, and then we went up and came the butt heads. That's true. That's true. I question that as far as the sustainability and budgeting, using as revenue sharing as a source. Good times get followed by bad times. I would question that. Now, another is that is this really the Housing Trust Fund becoming essentially our county housing authority, because it says that we are used to the creation of, but not limited to, the acquisition, pre-development, and rehabilitation of residential properties for single or multifamily. Will any of these be owned essentially by the county?
What we're looking at doing is, and the way that that was worded, it was meant that usually when these development proposals come in, sometimes part of the budget, of their budget, is to actually purchase that land. It's not the county purchasing that land, but it's the developers and those agencies that are going to be administering and running that site, like purchasing that land. So we are not looking as a division to be owning that land, owning that property, and running that property ourselves. We are simply providing that gap financing to that developer and those local agencies running that property for the affordability period to help get them over that hump, that affordable hump for that proposal.
How is this different? How is this different from what we're doing now, other than the fact it's coming through this particular structure?
So what this does is this provides that oversight authority, and this provides that ability that should any other funding, such as through financial institutions or anything else, or coming in, it allows the flexibility for those new funding streams to come in and to be managed by this particular entity. Whereas with our current division structure that we have going on, we might do a NOFA here or there for some rental housing developments with our home gap.
I'm sorry, you might do a what?
Notice of funding availability.
Notice of funding availability
Thank you.
for, rental developments through our home investment partnership grant, but we don't really have the mechanism in place to take in other funding streams and to increase our capacity to do that. So this will allow that growth, if you will,
Leverage.
to leverage other county funds, or excuse me,
This will
other
be
funds
this
coming
will be
into the county.
essentially the I can't think of any word, the holding tank or the structure by which you put the money in to then dispense, but you're not going to change what you're doing now. This does not change the scope. This does not, is that true?
It's housed within our division, but currently what we're doing and how we're administering community development block grants, home investment partnership grants, and emergency solution grants, all those other HUD fundings that come in, that is still administered through our current structure that we have in place. This is in addition to.
This is two new positions in the PTNEs to administer basically to administer the money and administer the fund to do this. This is the taking in and the spending of the money. This does not mean that we will be owning properties and the like.
We are
Not
not
looking for ownership.
No.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Seeing no one, let's prompt the vote.
You know?
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next is item number 10D, Board of Commissioners Budget Amendment appropriating American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for the Oakland Together Housing Security Initiative. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Powell. Okay. Is this you again, Rudy, or is Charlie gonna?
Yeah, and also Chuck, I'd love to talk to you after the meeting about the state revenue share. Kyle gave me some good answers because I have the same questions. So what we're talking about is two things. $5 million for the shelter capacity fund using ARPA, and the second thing is $2 million using ARPA for critical home repair with an emphasis on seniors in census-qualified tracts. That is something that's been amended thanks to Housing Department's wisdom, because that allows us to be ARPA qualified with these funds. I have on the line, if they're here, Leah McCall to answer any questions about the Shelter Capacity Fund, and she's the CEO of the Alliance for Housing, and then also Tim and/or Susan Harding from Habitat for Humanity and OLSHA to answer any questions about the need for the critical home repair program. But maybe following what Rudy and Shane did, if you have questions, we can go there. Because I think we've all talked about this and it's kind of straightforward.
Okay. I will open it up to the commission. Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Moss.
What do you mean by decongregating currently available units?
Decongregate or
Well,
non-congregate housing?
we're talking about decongregation.
Are you talking
Okay,
under
hold
the?
on. On the, now therefore be it resolved in the miscellaneous resolution in the, it says the first bullet point, 5 mil for the creation of a shelter capacity fund. Funds are to be used to increase the number of emergency shelters, and to decongregate currently available units to improve safety and privacy. What does that mean?
So short answer is when you have a shelter servicing people experiencing homelessness, there's a couple different models. Right now, there are some shelters that operate in a where everybody sleeps bunk beds in one room. And as it relates to COVID-19 infectious disease transmission, dignity of kind of having your own space when you're going through a tough time like that, the intent of this funding is to help provide financing for rehabilitation and/or development of new shelter space for non-congregate sheltering, where everybody can have their own space in their own room, and that reduces the risk of infectious disease transmission, as well as providing that dignity for whether it be a family or a single individual adult going through that particular situation.
So that term means the development or design of the shelter, and that the shelter be designed so you've got more room, more privacy, et cetera. It's not okay. Also, I notice that there's money for rehabilitation of existing structures such as motels, hotels, and other facilities to be used as structures. Who's going to do that? Who's going to own the motels and the hotels and the other existing structures?
Our nonprofits that we'll work with.
Nonprofits.
That we will work with.
Alliance for Housing, like that.
So this would be like Welcome In, this could be Hope, this could be Lighthouse, this could be a number of nonprofits that's kind of like currently do shelter work.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner McGilvery.
Yeah, my question is to Commissioner Cavell. Originally, when the housing was first proposed, it was for $29 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now the total is $14 million, is that correct?
17, yeah.
17?
Maybe my math's wrong, something like that.
I see,
Something like that?
So the original one, I believe that was introduced at the full Board of Commissioners, had the Housing Trust Fund within this current resolution. We pulled out the Housing Trust Fund conversation because the establishment of that was going to be a bigger conversation. It was going to have a lot more information in it.
Okay.
And so you kind of have to look at the two in combination when you're looking at that sum total.
So this resolution's just 7.
okay.
Well, what's your question?
That was pretty much it. I wanted to make sure I understood what was happening
Where
here.
the numbers
Yeah,
went.
So,
Commissioner Moss, you had another question?
Yeah, in one of the early versions of this, we were going to make I don't know, an inventory of county zoning and the policies, and that's I don't see it here. What happened to it?
You took it out.
Why?
Well, go ahead, Charles.
So this also goes to Gary's thing. In full and transparent government, right, we put something up and then we said, what do you think? And then everyone said, we like it or we don't like it. So part of that process was cutting the budget down because these people over here wanted to be smarter with their money. And same thing with the zoning. Talking to you all and a couple folks in the Democratic caucus, we found that maybe zoning, one, is not organic with this because what we're talking about is...
I'm sorry, what do you mean organic?
Well, that's what I was explaining. So it's not organic because we're talking about adding money to shelter capacity. We're talking about adding money to critical home repair, something that's already happening. And zoning is a bigger conversation that we think, after talking with you all, requires more thought. So we pulled it because we don't want people to think about zoning when what we're trying to do is shelter capacity and critical home repair. Because that has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
Isn't zoning, it's more of a local control anyway.
Yeah.
The local city, village, or township is really who controls the zoning in their location. So,
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Seeing no one, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, motion carries. Thanks very much. Next up, we have item 11, Economic Development and Infrastructure Committee recommendations. Now, I know we have two folks in this room that are going to have to take off to go to Parks, so I'm doing my darndest to get us through this agenda if we can.
I appreciate that.
All right, next up, item 11A, Economic Development Resolution Business Forward Initiative. Sean Carlson is our presenter, but I think Ingrid's here.
I'm here, I'm back.
Take care.
All right. I need a motion to recommend to the board this Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner Powell. Go ahead.
I'm going to sit here so I
Yeah,
can see the
it's
slide.
fine.
Okay.
Sit wherever you want. Just use the mic. Make sure you're using the mic.
Either, yeah, that's fine. Okay, good afternoon again. So Sean Carlson is at the MEDC. I do not believe he is logged in. He had some meetings, but I just want to confirm he's not on. Okay, yeah, I don't think he's come back. So, okay, so Commissioners, I'm here today to talk to you about the Business Forward Consultant Program. Right now, we've actually already kicked this off. We've started this. To refresh your memories, the Business Forward program was approved by the Board of Commissioners previously several months ago. That was a $3 million allocation that you all made towards small business resources and support. So I'm here to talk about that program and a proposal for further funding of that. Next slide, please.
Who's doing the slides?
Megan.
Oh, okay.
You're not.
Oh,
There we go. Okay,
Thank you,
perfect.
Megan.
I will move quickly in the essence of time. I'm probably standing between you and lunch, so I won't go. But please stop me if there are further questions. I'll do an overview. But if you want a deeper dive into some of these, please let me know. Right now, as you see here, Business Forward, what this program was done and designed to do was to identify and to address several issues. Number one is to mitigate some of the financial hardships that our small businesses experienced during COVID-19. In addition, we wanted to help our small businesses and our entrepreneurs provide support and resources to help them grow and to thrive. What happened was we received CARES money, and that was an opportunity where we provided small business grants to assist our small businesses during the peak of COVID. And so we've identified there are 15,000 businesses that we were able to work with, and we have those now in our inventory. And so the plan is to, right now we're continuing to work with them. With those 15,000 we've identified in addition to other small businesses throughout the county. Our focus for this program is for those businesses that are primarily 20 employees and under. And the outreach will be proactive, where we're embedded right now currently in those communities. All of this has been driven by data with which we've received. We work very closely with the University of Michigan, with the economics department there and their economists, who provide us annual research and data. And so the information that we receive from them, we use that to drive the direction of this program. And the goal of this is also to help lift up some of the minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned small businesses that we've identified in our communities to help them thrive. If you notice, there are 2 lines here that are in bold. The reason why they are in bold is because those are 2 of the requirements for our American Rescue Plan dollars. We have to address these issues, and this highlights some of those, that we must identify the COVID-19 and also we're identifying and working to address economic distress. Next slide, please. So some of that data I mentioned that University of Michigan provides us, you'll see here that there is information on the average household income for various regions around the county. These are lines, the colors, all you can see in the next slide here. There's a better map. But what they have done is they divided our county into 8 different regions. They looked at the average household income, and then using that data, if you'll see the bottom 4, the blue, which is identified by, we call it the West region. Then there's a dark maroon color, which is South Central, Farmington and Southfield. Kind of an army green there, which is Southeast, and then the bright red, which is considered central, outside Birmingham and Bloomfield. So that's primarily Pontiac and the Waterford area. Next slide. So here, if you zoom back out on that slide, you can see the colors. It gives you a better indication of where those areas are located. Oops, and whoever's behind the curtain, if you could zoom out a little. The Great Oz. Yes, so yeah, PUMA stands for Public Use Microdata Areas. This is information that comes from the U.S. Census block. Okay, next slide, please. As part of our economic outlook that we receive, one of the reports that we get here is the forecast of jobs by industry in the county. If you look at the next several years, there are several areas that our economists do not anticipate rebounding back to pre-COVID numbers. These fall primarily in the retail, the restaurant, some of our professional services, real estate, transportation services. So therefore, this was one of the strategic targeted areas where we wanted to make sure we help our businesses. What I also want to highlight here, though, is we do have manufacturing that's start too, because we want to make sure manufacturing is a major component and a major industry in the county, and we don't want to turn our backs on them. So we want to also continue to make sure that we're working with those manufacturers. That's a vital part of our defense and our automotive industries. Next slide. So here you can see, this just shows you a breakout. We have 39,000 companies in the county, of which 36,000 are considered small business, or 50 employees or below. When you look at that, you see that approximately 15,000 fall in what we would consider the lower wage or blue collar scale right there. Next slide. If you could zoom out just a little more, thank you.
Zoom out?
Or so you can see it's a little too close. If you could zoom out. There you go, perfect, okay. So right now, if you look here, based on the numbers here, 20 people or below, you see right now that makes up about 32,000 businesses roughly, and that's where we're gonna really focus our efforts. Next slide. What we also looked at was our information from the economists on poverty levels. This indicates where poverty is highest in the county, as marked by the dark red and the really deep red and then the darker red regions. This is also driving where we are looking at putting our targeted outreach for our small businesses. The goal is to help these communities, and the goal is to help lift them up. A rising tide lifts all boats. Next slide. So when we are looking at the American Rescue Plan, there are several parameters, a framework that's in place, certain gates, if you will, that a program or project must meet in order to qualify for this funding. So we looked at, is it transformational? Is this something that we can measure? And then also, what is the impact? These are several questions that we all answered, and we said, can we leverage the county's strength or economic potential? Yes. Does it target certain barriers, and does it reduce disparities? Yes. Does the investment align with our KPIs and our county objectives? And that's yes. And then do we have a return on investment? Yes. And then is this going to address areas impacted by COVID? And I will go into details that answer all of these questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so as you see, the county has established goals. I believe that all the commissioners have been part of conversations with county executive chambers and other county executives on talking about what are those goals and those community objectives. As you see here under economic development, some of our community objectives that are met through this program is it addresses increasing business investment. We help grow our minority businesses within the county, and we improve our labor force participation, all directly through this program. Our KPIs at the department level that are addressed through this are we are improving that household income that I just showed you in the previous slides. The goal is to raise that across the county. And also we are engaging with the number of employers that are being served by our workforce development programs. Next slide. So here you see what is what I want to go into real quickly is for those of you who are not as familiar. When in economic development, we define our industries or our businesses by traded clusters and local clusters. So traded is, for instance, manufacturing or construction. It's because those are goods and services that must be located in a particular area. For instance, like automotive manufacturing, they have to be near a certain source. Whereas local, those are industries or businesses that you find in every community: banking, retail, restaurant, things of that nature. So when we look at the entire GDP for Oakland County, it is a total of $105 billion. Oakland County makes up over 20% of the GDP for the entire state of Michigan. So 1/5 of the GDP comes from our county alone. We are a juggernaut when it comes to the GDP, but yet we cannot sit on our laurels. There are still people, as you saw in that poverty slide and other areas, that still need assistance. So if you look at the local clusters that I just mentioned, local clusters are 62% of our GDP. And that's the target for this group. So those people, when you look at the number that have jobs in that area, it is almost just short of 350,000. The number of companies that have less than 20, we highlighted earlier, which is a little over 32,000. And if you look at what we have defined as one of our target goals for Nilda and her group, is if we go after and we outreach and hit 6,000 companies over the next 5 years, then we can hit approximately 30,000 companies. We'd be getting close to hitting all of those local clusters. Next slide. So we have 3 types of targets when it comes to this category here. We have something we define as a potential entrepreneur, emerging, and established. A potential entrepreneur is that entrepreneur who is thinking about starting a business, maybe has started to dabble a little in his or her garage or basement. They're just at the basically nascent stages of this. The second group is emerging. This is someone who maybe has started a business in the last year or two, kind of getting it up and running. Maybe he's hitting some barriers, doesn't maybe know what to do, has hit some walls or just needs some additional information or resources. And the third group is established. Maybe this is someone who's actually running a business. They might be on a main street right now. They might be running an online business, but yet they could still take it to the next level. They want to expand and grow. Maybe it is a restaurant owner and they want to have a second location. So that's what we would consider someone who's a more established entrepreneur. Next slide. So when we look at what we're trying to do, we are going to be hitting all of these different groups, but we want to look at, okay, what is the return on investment, right? What are we going to get from the dollars that we put into this program? What we did is did a conservative estimate. We said, okay, of the potential, of the emerging, of the established, what do we think that we can affect, and how can we move the needle? if you look at the potential entrepreneurs, if we have, let's say we hit a group of 500, that's the goal of that new setting up a business. If just 10%, we could get 10% or 50 of those entrepreneurs to create one job. So 50 new jobs. Based on our data, we know that the average income or the wage for someone in that service sector is going to be approximately $35,000 a year. So you take that 50 jobs times that $35,000, and we could create $1.75 million. So you see, we did that same math for emerging. If we could get 10% of to be successful out of 2,000 that we hit in the emerging group, we could increase by 7 million, and then of the established, again, conservative estimate, if we hit 3,500 and 10% of those are successful, and we thought maybe with an established entrepreneur, it's more likely that they could create 2 jobs times 35,000, we could create 24.5 million. So for a total of 33 million. So when you look at that, for every dollar that we spend on this program, our output would be 9.24 for every dollar. Next slide. So to do that, we have, with the first 3 million, we already have started this program with the fearless Nilda Thomas to my left here. And she has brought in, we've got a group of 9 consultants total. And they have various backgrounds. They are adept in workforce development, franchise ownership. They've owned retail and restaurant establishments, been in manufacturing. But the common thread with all of them is that they have all been or are small business owners. Next slide. Next slide. Here we go. So what this group is doing is they act as general practitioners, if you will. The group is embedded in communities, and I'll show you that right here in a minute. But the group goes out, they meet with our small businesses, they diagnose the business, they identify needs, barriers, resources that we can connect with. We then work to connect to these small businesses with those proper resources or groups or people that they need to help them. We offer things like connecting to the Small Business Development Center counselors, to our procurement technical assistant counselors. We work with helping them get access to capital if they need to talk to someone with one of our seed lending or any of those different programs. We also have groups that we're working with. We're retaining people like lawyers, HR consultants, CPAs, and other experts to offer assistance. So when a consultant sits down with a small business and identifies that it's appropriate and a small business might be ready and needs HR assistance, we know that a small business doesn't have an HR director on staff, or they don't have a lawyer on staff. But we can give them 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of free consultative time with a lawyer or with an HR director to help them with their needs. So the goal is we've already started reaching out. Our team has that list of 15,000 small businesses that I've mentioned that we assisted through CARES. We also are working proactively with all of our chambers of commerce in these areas, all of our downtown directors, all the city managers, with all of the, did I just miss the DDAs, yeah, so all the different groups. We have engaged with all these various stakeholders. They have already given us list of small businesses, and they are right now proactively reaching out to these groups. Next slide. Okay, so you can see here, this is where all of our consultants currently are. These are areas where hashtags are on those. Our hash marks are on the map. Again, that's indicating those pumas that I referenced earlier, those areas of household income that are below the average in the county. So you can see those are distributed throughout. Right now, if you go to the next slide then, this is the team that is embedded in all those communities. So this is the group. As you see, a lot of them have a variety of experiences, but they come together and they all augment each other very well. Next slide. So the reason we're here in front of you today is to talk about the potential growth of this program. As you see, if you go back to the other slide, and we'll come to it, there are some areas of the county that are not as well covered as you saw as some others right now. So the goal is to improve and increase the outreach. Next slide, please. So if you see the blue dots, those are the areas that we'd like to put 5 additional consultants in. So we get up there in the Lake Orion, Novi, and other areas. We feel that we could have better coverage, and we've also received feedback and requests from some of your fellow commissioners and other directors and chambers of commerce saying that there is still additional need for all these areas. Next slide. So the goal would be to embed 5 additional people. We would provide these services. What we also are doing is fostering and would continue to foster an ecosystem in all of these respective communities that help grow. So I mentioned these lawyers and these HR directors and all these other experts. You have these lawyers and all these different people in your communities. So the goal is that we are fostering and helping them apply and allowing them to be those consultants on the ground. So if you have a local law firm in Clawson, we're hoping that that local law firm is the one that's giving legal support to the fellow small businesses down the road. As you see here, the goal is about 25 different professional service providers throughout the regions, and then we'll continue to leverage our relationships with stakeholders such as SEED, SBDC, PTAC, and others. Next slide. These are just some of the examples of that specific work that we would offer through legal. You see things like legal basics, setting up certain types of entities, accounting and finance, things like intro to QuickBooks and capital. Next slide. Business operations, a lot of different areas here, how to do everything from grant writing to how to write a business plan and other operations. Next slide. Marketing, that's essential. E-commerce, social media. Next slide. Human resources, I just mentioned that. If you're a small business, a lot of people might not be aware of wage requirements and labor laws and things of that nature, so that's important for us to educate our small businesses there. And then IT. One of the things that became very apparent for our small businesses, especially during COVID, is if you're a retail establishment or many other establishments, if you don't have an online presence, it's very difficult to make people aware of what you have to offer. And people also like that hybrid of being able to do things like order online and also walk through a brick and mortar door. Next slide. The tool that we're using to track all this is called SourceLink. It is a customer relation management tool. So it does a couple of things. It allows our team, as every time they meet with a small business, they will be inputting all the information, tracking it. It's almost like a project management tool, so they can make sure that they are addressing all of the needs, following up appropriately, referring and connecting to additional resources as appropriate. But what it also does, it's a website too that allows, if you're a small business, you can go on the front end and see and click things like I need HR help, and I need to talk to a lawyer, and I need to learn how to write a business plan. You can check all these different resources too and get connected to our community partners. Next slide. So with that, I tried to move quickly, but if I'm happy to answer questions or fill in any additional information.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Powell.
So, all of this is wonderful. I'm happy that we're moving in this direction. But I had a question. One, personally, I will be reaching out to you because I know I govern and vote for a lot of this stuff, but I'm a small business owner myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I know some of it is conflict of interest because I vote for some of this stuff. So I just wanted to gain clarity on what things even could I assist in some of the needs I may need for my business? Would I be able to be privy to that, be it that I'm overseeing or voting and stuff in? So I just wanted to reach out and get clarity on that.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to bring that same thing up for our workers or people that we are dealing with. You may have an attorney group that y'all referring businesses. Like, is there any way that conflict of interest plays a part in them being able to utilize the resources that we're offering?
When you say the conflict for that second part, are you talking about for someone like yourself?
Well, first, I know me to get clarity for myself, because I'm different, though. I'm
Yeah.
voting for a lot of this stuff, so I know it's conflict of interest
Yeah.
for me in certain aspects. But if there are some resources that I could benefit from, then I would love to, because, again, that's, I'm hindering just because I'm a commissioner. I can't get no help
Yeah.
with my own small business. But the second part is, what if we have employees that work here? Is there any conflict if they have small businesses that they can't utilize? So that's just something I wanted to put on the radar.
Yeah, we could look into all that.
April here, just to clear that channel, because
Yeah.
I know we have small business owners in this place.
Sure.
We all know people got to have multiple
Yep.
incomes now. So I just wanted to put that on your radar just to clear
Yeah.
that too. And that's something y'all can work on later. But
Okay.
for myself as a commissioner, and then just other people, because like you said, we utilize that lawyer firm that may be helping, you know what I mean? But make sure it's not conflict of interest, be it if we referring people to them.
I think it's a good question because like Commissioner Powell says, a lot of people have that second, third income now with their side business. And just because they have, a day job.
They're county worker
here.
Can they, you know what I mean? I don't know where that is.
I think it's a
legally.
good question.
Yeah, we'll
So
look
I just
into
want
that.
to clear the channel, and I know,
Yep.
and then I was gonna say, like for me, I know I'm not in that system. So how many businesses may think it's a conflict? I don't know.
Right.
It's just something I think
That's
it's
a
worth us clearing,
great
and it may
question,
help
yep.
your numbers increase.
Yeah, no.
So people kind of getting the clarity on that, as
Yep.
far as even us in our own pool of employees.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question, so we'll look into that.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Commissioner Moss.
It's a very good question with the conflicts of interest. I think that's one for the legal department.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Good question. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments on this presentation? It just seems to me like we're way out there ahead of just about anybody else at least in the state of Michigan, in terms of how deeply we're going into trying to support every business that we possibly can. So.
And I wanted to just be clear. Anything that I have tried to acquire as a small business owner, I went through proper channels as a commissioner to consult with legal to make sure I'm doing okay, okay? So I want all my colleagues in the public.
It's okay. Thank you,
No
Commissioner.
free dibs or, just because I'm a commissioner. I got to follow process too. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner. All right.
Looks like good in orange.
Yeah, right. Right. Okay, well, if everybody's comfortable with the presentation and where we're going, let's prompt the vote. On the resolution, thank you.
There's some great resources. Like, I need clarity now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we only have 2 more items.
Madam Chair, we have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you very much. With
Thank
that,
you.
we will move on to item number 12A, Human Resources Resolution approving a second annual leave buyback option under Merit Rule 23. I need a motion. Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Kowal. All right.
All right, I'll try to make these quick. Can you guys hear me?
No, pull it up closer if you can.
This one's fine. Okay, so thank you very much for taking time with me today. So I'll make this as brief as possible. So right now, employees have what's called a PTO bank, paid time off. Depending on how long you're here, it's called an accrual system, and they accrue more as the time has been here. So we have currently on the books right now in a merit rule, we can have what's called a buyback one time a year, which is people who have over 60 hours of PTO time are eligible to get paid out for a year instead of taking it if you're over 60 hours. So normally we only do 1 a year. However, this year I'm asking for 2 for a couple of reasons. We had such a significant absenteeism rate as it relates to COVID between the months of October and February that we had a lot of employees covering shifts for people, significant overtime, especially in the sheriff's department, and just a lot of people could not take the time off. And so what's happening now is employees are losing their time. If they don't take it, it falls off the books. And so obviously our supervisors are really trying to accommodate our employees. So now they're trying to okay, can I try to take Friday off to not lose my time? So the request is that we would allow for 2 this year instead of 1. It is currently in the fringe benefit fund. It's already booked on as a liability, and so it would just be moved into a paid benefit instead of a liability.
So the money's there.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, does anybody have any comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, let's go ahead and prompt the vote.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, item carries, motion carries. Last part of our regular agenda, item 12B, Human Resources Staffing Modification to create a Chief Employee and Labor Relations Officer classification and position. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner, yeah, you did.
Okay, I did. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
you did.
I'm so sorry.
You're good. We'd tell you if you didn't.
That's true.
Okay, so Commissioner Charles made the motion. I need a support, Commissioner Powell. Okay.
Thank you again. As you know, I've been acting HR director now for a couple of years for Oakland County, and we've been really monitoring what the needs are with our department. And so one of the things that is becoming the most intense, if you will, is in the labor relations. So it's employee and labor relations division. We have 2 people in there now for 5,000 employees. So it's important to note people think that's just labor, like labor contracts. It's not. It's for all employees. So whether you're in merit system, appointed, whatnot, they are the first in line for complaints, questions, policy, all of those things. And so one of the things that we've been trying to look at is what is it that we need. And so we have decided, our department, and in particular our labor relations division, that the primary thing that we need is somebody to help be more in the strategic part of it, know and understand labor law. Not only would they be helping us with all those policies, mirror rules, and making sure we're following law, it would also be helping with union negotiations, management of the CBA contracts, grievance issues that come to the department, as well as any kind of complaints, investigations that we need to do. So having somebody with that employment background, I think employee law background, would be extremely helpful. So given that we had a open position for another HR analyst in the labor relations unit, and we've decided that it would make the most sense to eliminate that position, create the space for the chief employee and labor relations officer, and we would also eliminate a part-time employee and also be able to reduce some legal services by having that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Moss.
So in other words, this is the county executive basically redeploying his staff and his positions. It's
Yeah.
an internal reorganization.
It is, correct. Yes, for that division,
Thank you.
yes. There is no addition to the budget. And I think we'll even be able to decrease our legal services even further.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Cavell.
Hey, bro. From reading this, I don't like this. I understand the need for more staffing, but the thing that gets me hung up is having someone come between the growing unions in Oakland County employees' ranks and you in labor negotiations. From what I understand, aren't your labor negotiations once every few years, every 3 years?
Yep.
So, one, what is this person doing the other 2 years? 2, if, especially in relation to the labor negotiations, if that wasn't part of this job, I totally understand that you would need more people. But when you speak to the fact that they would help with labor negotiations, isn't that your job?
That the HR director, yes,
Yeah.
but there's 13 unions, and I literally have been doing union negotiations for 25 hours a week lately. But I'm saying, but you also remember, they all have grievances, issues with the CBA that we work with constantly talking to labor reps about what's going on here. Not to mention, this is not just labor, so employee investigations, EEOC complaints, all of that. We only have 2 people doing that. So we're still keeping those 2 people, but instead of adding another person who can help field a phone call, we're asking for somebody who has that employment law behind them. So they're not necessarily getting in the way or in between. They're actually there to help help mediate and help make it so we don't get to a grievance, we don't get to an investigation, we don't get to those complaints. So it's just taking one of the positions that we did have to just take a phone call and having somebody who can actually help us with strategy, policy creation, that preventative care, to be frankly honest.
And that's what worries me is the strategy creation. I understand you need someone else to help you with grievances or other policy issues, but that sounds like...
It wouldn't be strategy with the union, so I'm still there, but this person would help support that and also have a legal background for a lot of these things, have a legal piece of
labor
it.
attorney on management side to then be able to be more argumentative with our employees that are in a union. And I don't like that setup.
Okay,
Everything
well,
else
that's
that
not what
do.
they would be
Yeah.
doing, but I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to move to table this if you're okay with it. I know we're having another finance committee meeting before the next board meeting.
Yeah.
I think that's right, because we have
Not
to have
yet.
a lot. Oh, okay.
One has not been scheduled.
Oh, that's what I heard. Okay, well,
I will vote no on this, so however you want to
Well,
put
do you
it.
have a motion? Is there a motion to table on the floor?
I would move that, yes.
It would be postpone, not table.
Or motion to postpone?
Postpone, yeah.
Whatever the word is.
Take a vote.
Any support?
I don't have,
There's no support for the motion, so
Okay.
we'll just move on. Does anybody else have anything? they want-
Wait. If he doesn't have a support for the motion, it's not gonna pass because we don't have enough.
it can't
No.
be on the table without a
Let me-
motion.
Okay, so for the sake, because I don't want it to,
I hear you.
yeah, let me support the motion. Let's support
To
it.
table?
Yeah, because I don't want it to not, then we don't get to vote for it. Yeah.
If we postpone it, then we can regroup and think about it. If we don't postpone it, it may pass, it may not pass.
I'm not a parliamentarian, let me play one on TV. There is a motion to table, or excuse me, motion to postpone, which has been put on the floor by Commissioner Cavell.
I'm gonna just
Right.
support that.
You're going to support it?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm just gonna say this, I heard what he's heard, that we probably will have one. So, yeah, let's just do that.
Okay.
Okay, well, then we vote on the motion to postpone.
Prompt the vote.
Prompt the vote, please.
It'll say postpone underneath the item.
Okay. Don't go. We're not done with you yet. No.
Motion failed, 2 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay.
Anybody else have any comments? Because I'm going to comment. I have never been a member of a union, but I've been deeply involved in labor relations negotiations in my former life and in my career. And what I always found was that having that leadership from the union to negotiate, because I was in management, operations management in manufacturing. So, you're talking to the workers and the unions all day, every day. And I always found that at negotiation times, or even when there are issues, it was always really good to have one person on management side and one person on the side of the employee or the union that could, go out in the hallway and talk to each other and stay within the rules, but build those relationships, right? And I have watched you try to go through the labor issues here. 13 unions, one person who's responsible for HR for a whole bunch of other stuff too. I believe you need a person whose focus is specifically that. And I don't think it's antagonistic. I personally do not believe it's an antagonistic position to the workers. I think it actually is a communication device. And as long as the money is there within your department and you're just reallocating it, as Commissioner Moss said, I have to say that I want to support Executive Coulter's desires to run his organization in the way that he, and you, of course, feel that it should be run, Deputy Lynch. So with that, I'm in support of this because I think the need is there and you've figured out how you're going to pay for it. So I am disagreeing with my colleague on this side of the table, but, that's okay. Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner Moss.
Just a question.
I mean, Commissioner Cadell.
Because you stated you still the interim. So technically before, when we did have 2 people, I know we kind of changed with the unions, has increased in our involvement. Would that have helped if we had the 2 leadership? Because that's an issue I know in your department as well.
So part of it, that's a very good question, thank you. So some of it has been actually, is that we actually are struggling to find an HR director because what I'm finding is they either have really strong labor relations experience, but they don't know the other side of HR, which is your process, your benefits, your compensation, all of that. Or I'm getting a lot more folks, to be frankly honest, that have no labor experience, but they know the HR side. And I'm feeling like I have a lot of both. So that's why I've been able to kind of maintain this process, but to find an HR director that has both labor relations experience as well as the other side of HR has been very difficult. And I think having somebody I want to be clear, this isn't just
for the unions. It's for employees as a whole. It just happens to be, helping support the union piece.
That's why.
And let me just be clear, I was just talking about your department, period.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
I
yeah,
know
no,
y'all
that would
kind of
help.
short on the top.
That would help,
You
but
still be in the.
Oh, yeah. No, it would help. But again, when an HR director comes in, there's still, that's a big, heavy unit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Cavell?
No, I was just gonna, you're good.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. With that, then we go back to the original motion, and we can prompt the vote.
Madam Chair, you have 4 yeas, 1 nay.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes the regular business of the Finance Committee. All we have left now is public comment. So if there's anybody from the public who wishes to address this committee on any topic, please come to the end of the table and state your name and your community. And you have 3 minutes, which, since it's Ms. Kennedy, I think she knows that.
Yes. I've made it to 2 o'clock, I see. I couldn't do that yesterday.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion. And as I watch the Finance Committee throw millions of dollars away in ARPA money, which we will not have in the future, creating a lot of new programs for welfare systems that we will have to support with our general fund when the ARPA dollars run out, in light of all the businesses we've already lost, all the tax revenue that we don't even know yet that we've lost, and the fact that I believe, as Mr. Moss indicated, I am totally in agreement. I remember the early 80s. I was actually an investment advisor back then, and I can tell you absolutely, I believe the debt that we are incurring right now and the programs we have applied at the federal, state, and local level are placing us on a trajectory of very bad economics. I'm very concerned because I've seen a lot of refugees in my community, in my local stores. And I actually have a video of the bus where they actually changed the route to the Smart Bus. It no longer just goes to Auburn Hills Meyer to benefit the citizens of Pontiac, which I would think would be appropriate, being that it's Oakland County. Instead, the entire route got changed for the huge, big Smart Buses. Maybe you've seen them around the campus now. I've seen them quite a bit, going all the way downtown to go all the way up to Oakland County. That's an additional 40 miles each way, round trip, every trip of the bus. So I actually don't understand why that shift would be made to where we're paying Smart Buses to go outside of the county to bring them to our grocery stores, rather than the people in Pontiac. I think they deserve the support of our county, not the people in other counties. I really have a problem with the fact that workforce development budget in the meeting on June 23rd, right around 57 minutes in, they said all the workforce development money was eligible to be used by the refugees and immigrants, all of it. And then I keep seeing programs like the child services that Woodward brought in as a communication. Why is that funded by workforce development? A lot of things seem to be funded by workforce development or brought in as a communication item, like the raise the age for $750,000 grant. I'm very concerned with the general direction of our county. We need to prioritize our citizens first. I am very concerned when they talk about, well, we can just raise the taxes because we have inflation on our property tax. That'll increase our revenue. Well, that means the taxpayers are going to have increasing property taxes that could put them in jeopardy of losing their homes if the inflation keeps and you just keep having the attitude that we'll add programs, we'll just increase taxes. I was actually doing a comparison, so I need to do a little more detailed comparison to see exactly what we're doing, where the money is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Are there anybody else who is here from the public? Seeing no one, I will close public comment. If nobody has any other business to come before this, I will call us adjourned at 2:05. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there and getting us through this.
Yeah.